see how this is all set up. How's everyone doing tonight? All right. We'll see. This is that uneasy time where you all aren't sure what's going to come out of my mouth, and neither am I. So I guess I should introduce myself. My name's Evan Calloway. I am an alcoholic. I'm thankful to my sponsor who rode up in the car with me, Greg, and I'm really interested to hear what he's going to say tonight. I see you didn't bring your suit and tie, so you can borrow my coat. These sayings always seem more comfortable when it's several months out, right? And then the night of, I just kind of wish I could kick back and relax. But I am an alcoholic. Let's see. I think in the beginning, what I really want you to know, instead of getting a picture of some kind of biography of my life, is that, by nature, I'm just a guy who's really a little uneasy in my own skin, I can remember that from as early on when I was a little kid coming up, just always kind of feeling a little uncomfortable in my own skin. I always knew this other thing about myself, too, that I was always waiting to get over there, and I knew if I could just get over there, the grass was going to be greener, things were going to get better, and I was just kind of holding out to get to that place. My father was in the military, so I got to move a lot of different times and try that theory out. And this is before I even found a drink, obviously. So as a kid, I'm just moving around, kind of this insecure little boy, and I never knew quite what was wrong with me. I just knew that there was just something a little off. Always judging the way I felt on the inside on all the other people, all the other fine folks of this world who just had it together, right? And I just knew I was looking for something. So the only recollection I have of alcohol, the thing that I throw out there too, is I didn't really have a picture of what a problem drinker looked like. I didn't grow up in a house where there was problem drinking. I didn't grow up where I got to see any alcoholics. The idea of alcohol that I have is, a lot of veterans in my family, a lot of military history. Both grandparents, World War II veterans, and I had my one grandfather who was a heavy beer drinker, or just a beer drinker, not even heavy beer drinker. Served his time. This is the kind of man that with a high school degree, I don't even think he finished high school. He just rose to the top of every industry that he ever put himself in through. And I remember every time I was around that man, this guy that I loved and showed me a lot of love and looked up to and respected, that I would always smell that smell of beer on his breath, and that kind of equaled love to me. And then over here on this other side, I had my other grandfather and my grandmother riveting on, putting in rivets on planes, and my other grandfather also served in the Navy, and he was a dirty martini guy, and he was another guy that just did well for himself. Anything he put into and put his mind to, and he just kind of rose to the top and was able to he put in a little bar in his house. And I remember as a young boy going to his house, all my folks are from Kansas, going over there, just on one of those little spinny bar stools, man. I'd just spin around and keep one of those big jars of martini olives out there, and just pick on those things. And so there was always just kind of this conviviality around, and just this classic idea of what drinkers are like, and that's just what you did because you were a grown person, and that all just kind of built up in my mind and came back to play out for me. Several years later, I had a real big problem understanding that I had a problem with alcohol. I just thought that was my deal, to be able to drink like that, like the way I wanted. But romanticized idea of booze, right? So I kind of just followed my father around, some places in school, anywhere from a year to 3 years. Some places in school I do fine, some places not, whatever. I was kind of, by the time I hit high school, not to drink a liquor in my body, but I was pretty much, I was screwing up pretty good. I was a bit of a knucklehead. It was way easier to skip class and follow the other knuckleheads around then I guess follow the kids going around getting straight A's and all that stuff, and showing up to school when they say they're going to show up, that kind of stuff. So already before my first drop of alcohol in my system, before my first good drunk, and I'm already hitting trouble, And so I say that because I know my alcoholism doesn't have anything to do with my trouble, which I ended up getting in quite a bit. Got sent to a military high school, and that's kind of saved my course correction. And I just knew that if I stayed on this course, again, always judging myself, how I'm doing based on how everyone else does, if I stayed on this course, I just knew that would equal success somewhere out here. So that boarding school, that kind of saved my keister, and I got into a state university out there. I got to go to higher education, and would you believe it? That's where I found booze. I befriended a guy, a veteran. So he was old enough. He just got out and he's going back to school, and I befriended that guy, and I could get booze whenever I wanted, pretty early on. And I remember I did a lot of blacking out at that time. My first good drunk was in like a dorm room, and I was in there with a bunch of strangers and a bunch of pretty girls, pretty women, and I was just kind of bring that uneasiness and that uncomfortableness everywhere I go. And I noticed over there were a bunch of bright, shiny cans just piled as high as you want them. And once those things started getting passed around, and I cracked my first beer, it was on. I didn't know anything about an allergy to alcohol or obsession. I just knew by beer 5 or 6, I was feeling pretty good. I knew that these were my best friends in the world, and that we should probably, find a cruise ship or something together to go on, But things were going to be all right. We're going to work this out. We're going to get good and drunk together, and we're going to just figure out the world's problems. And that's what alcohol did for me, man, from the first get-go. And I don't remember how much I drank that night. I'm really not going to impress anyone probably in here with amounts or anything like that. Looking back, I know I never had control over the amount I drank. From get-go, I was always drinking way more than I cared to, I guess. A lot of blacking out in those days too. I learned real quick that 151 will do the job quicker, so I just popped the cap off one of those and start swigging that down and burn nice and good going down, man. And then I'd feel hope for the night. A lot of embarrassing stuff like coming to and fun stuff like piles of my own, stuff, and all the fun things that come along with that. Not trying to gross anyone out here today. But yeah, I drank my way right out of college. I lasted a whole year, which I thought was pretty successful. I wasn't like those people that only last a semester, right? Always had this high outlook on myself, and at the same time, right, that dichotomy or that conflict of the drunk, where I just know I'm the lowest of the low, but at the same time, I just know what a big deal I am. So I lasted 2 semesters. It was kind of a big deal, and but I drank my way out, and I did the one thing. At that point, my parents just cut me off. They're kind of helping me get through school, and they said they had enough, through going through the high school, all the problems I caused there, and going through college, all the problems I caused there. They just said, you know what, son, you're on your own. And so I thought I was pretty good with a gas station application, and I was just going to keep going to school because that's where the partying was and all that stuff. But that doesn't work out, when you're kicked out, you're kicked out. So I did the one thing that the only thing I could figure out save my butt, man. And there was one thing that I swore I'd never do after that military boarding school. I signed the dotted line to go into the military. I enlisted in the military, which I didn't really like being told what to do or showing up early in the morning. I didn't really feel like I didn't really like making my bed and getting all that stuff done. But just like anything else in my life, I've always been a taker too. That's the other thing, man. That didn't really start with drinking. That's just the way I am. I'm really concerned with me and what I deserve and what I'm getting out of it. And so I kind of entered my contract with the military that way. And I wish I could stand up here and tell you that I signed up for some different reason. I know there are a lot of men and women that sign up because they believe, they have values, and they have principles that they stand up for. They want to stand up for those things and fight for our country and all that. But I can't stand up here and tell you that's why I signed. I signed to save my ass because my ass was on the line. And that's you. Thank you for laughing at me. That's the way I did it. It's like if I could just figure out a way to get out of this, and then I'm back on that trajectory, right? As long as I'm doing what I knew my parents did or my uncle did, if I'm headed for a successful life, then I can kind of prove that I don't really have a problem. And from the get-go, I always kind of knew, had in the pit of my stomach, I knew I was out of control with my drinking, but I always had a plan on how I was going to get it together. And with a little bit of success, a little bit back on track, I just knew I was going to make it. The heavy drinking, we'll figure that out along the way. So I just drug that into the military. And that relief, that's what I forgot to talk about, man. It was still doing a lot for me, That's what I forgot to talk about in that dorm room, right? Just that, when I get that first good drink in, man, just takes it relieves me of the bondage of self, and that's what it did in that dorm room, and that's what it did for many, many years. It relieved me of the bondage of self. I'm not so worried about what I'm getting anymore. I'm not so worried about what you think of me or what I think of you. I just know we're all buddies, and it's conviviality, and I'm having a good time. And it was just that magic pill, All I had to do was pop the top and start drinking. And I really didn't care what it was. You put whatever it is on that table, and you tell me it'd make me feel better than when I was sober. I'd put it into my body. So I brought that into the military with me, and they don't think too highly of people who stay drunk and use outside issues too much. So I was just constantly on the verge of being in trouble in there as well, bringing my trouble around with me. By that time, we talked about the progression of this disease. By that time, I was out of control drinking. I never had just a few. Any excuse that I could have, I know we always joke that I don't need an excuse to start drinking or get drunk. But if I had one, I felt a lot better about it. So give me a hurricane, give me something. We used to have hurricane parties, and then we'd buy out, everyone's rushing to the liquor store to get suited up. Never mind about water and all that stuff you need. If you got liquor, you'll forget about it for a while. So that's the way I lived. And I just felt like I was in control of it, I thought I'd figure it out somewhere down the line. You couldn't convince me that these problems that always had drinking involved in them were real problems. It's just bad luck. That's what a lot of the guys on the inside usually identify with that, man, when I'm talking. It's just bad luck. I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. The only other car on the road at the time was a state trooper, so it's like, of course I'm going to get caught when I peel off the side of the road because I'm messing around with my best friend who's in the passenger seat, and I crash into the highway sign and it comes down like a guillotine in between us. It's just bad luck. It's just bad luck. I was drunk out of my mind that night. And then I just had this smooth talk, I'd give an officer a lot of yes sirs and roger that sirs, and they would just know, I guess they'd know I'm a good guy. That guy must be in the military. He's giving me some roger that's. And so there was a lot of times where I got to sleep it off. That particular night, I got to sleep it off. My buddy and I just slept in our car. The cop took the keys and drove off for his shift and returned it in the morning. I don't have a problem. See, I got out of that one. I didn't get a DWI. And I used to describe that as lucky. I was lucky. I don't know, man. That bought me several more years of just miserable drinking. And, at that time, still, when I'm thinking about it, that time, all through the military, I still got a lot of relief from drinking. It did a lot to me, but it did a lot for me too. So you couldn't tell me anything. That was my first introduction to AA as well. So I'm young. I think I was barely of age at that time, and the military thought I had a problem. I disagreed. I highly disagreed. But I was going to AA, right? I'm always the guy with the white slip in his hand, having to get it signed by someone. So that's why I never poo-poo that stuff, man. You know, it's like some people really, some groups, some people don't really like that. They won't either. I've seen it where they won't sign or whatever. They discourage that. I don't know what I would have heard or what I wouldn't have heard if someone hadn't made me come to AA. So I think God gets to use us all the various people and systems in place to get us to where we need to be, because I'm where I need to be tonight for sure. So I made it out by the skin of my teeth of there. The AA didn't stick. Booze was doing too much for me still, so I really couldn't hear what you guys were talking about. I just know, when you're an AA in recovery, you go to meetings and somebody annoyingly makes you read something when you really don't want to read, and I just wanted to sit way in the back and be unnoticed, you know. So I just stopped after I fulfilled their requirements. I stopped going. Why would I keep going? I don't have a problem, you know. So the first introduction, I can't admit I have a problem, so I'm not interested in your solution. I keep drinking for 10 more years after that, 10 more years. I use the MGI Bill, go back to school, about drink myself out of school. In fact, I left with one course away from having a degree. But by that point, the progression of my disease was so great, and the use of this crutch was so great that I didn't even care. Drinking was the most important thing to me. By that time, if you weren't talking about boozing or if you weren't talking about beer or something, I didn't know how to talk to you. That's the God's honest truth. I couldn't have a normal conversation. I couldn't talk to you about sports or whatever, politics or how's the weather. It had to be about drinking. That's all I knew. But I'd met my wife by that time. Met, engaged, we're married, having kids, all within, 4 or 5 years after I got out of the military. I'd stopped going to college. Drinking's the most important thing to me. I could tell you this, I was a stay-at-home father. That's kind of the agreement we had. Again, just thinking back to that time, I signed the dotted line to save my butt. My wife already had a career going for her. So naturally, by the way, I'd gone back for an art degree, so I don't know what that's going to get me. So I guess I could paint the side of your barn or something. I don't know. But so naturally, she's going to go off and she'll be the breadwinner. And then it's a modern society, right? Then I kind of get to feel good about myself because I'm supporting my wife. She's the breadwinner. I acknowledge that. And I just stay at home, and about by noon, it's drinking time, buddy. And I wasn't an everyday drinker. I would try to hold off to prove to everybody that I wasn't a problem drinker, man. I wasn't an alcoholic. And lo and behold, I would try to swear off the whole week. And by Wednesday, it felt long enough, right? I was like, I'm making too big of a deal about this. I got this thing, feeling better physically. I've been to the gym a couple times, made a few protein shakes. I'm fine. So whatever, like someone cuts me off in traffic on Wednesday and I gotta have a drink. That's all it took. By that time, somewhere in my brain, it's just linked up that drinking is the answer. And it just shortcuts all other thinking. All the record of all the bad stuff and trouble I've gotten into as a result of this thing. All the times I either came to in drunk tanks or nearly walked out of a marriage or nearly got kicked out of the military. All those times just don't even register when my alcoholic mind tells me I need a drink. Just a drink, Evan. Just one stiff drink will take the edge off, and then we could think properly about this problem that's in front of us. And I don't know how many times we talk about alcoholic sanity. I don't know how many times that's how it recurred in my brain of just, here I just got pulled over, drunk as hell, got let off on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. And then by Wednesday, my brain's telling me just one stiff drink. And whatever this thing is that irritates you so much, we'll sit down and we'll devote all our mental capacity to this thing. And that stiff drink, man, that'll take the edge off so you're not worried, and we'll figure it out. And then by like stiff drink number 3, I'm not even thinking about it anymore, right? I'm just stumbling around like mumbling to myself. And this is why I have kids, right? I'm a stay-at-home father. These are young babies that I'm taking care of. I kept them alive. Everyone says, but stay-at-home father, that's a lot of stay-at-home parent, that's a lot of work. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just stayed drunk and I put them in front of a TV. We had safety gates up. That's the best I could do. I was a very sick individual. We talk about like the spiritual malady. I've gotten very sick. So that's my fathering. And I loved them. I love my kids more than anything in this world. But when it came to alcohol, King Alcohol would pull me away from my kids in a heartbeat. And I know we're supposed to share in a general way, so I'll kind of keep some of those details to myself. But there's a lot of stuff on my 5th step list that I thought I was going to bring to my grave, A lot of stuff of poor fatherhood that I thought, maybe I never have to tell another soul this. And then that just kind of eats away at you. But then you have a stiff drink and you worry about it later. And then, of course, right, everyone knows in here, I figure once you hear me say, take a stiff drink, it's on, right? I'm not just sticking to one stiff drink. That's a drinking night now. It's blacking, on into the night. Blacking out, maybe coming to early morning. And I don't know. Will I come to in the morning? Will I come to on my couch still holding my drink? Or am I going to come to in someone else's yard or someone else's house? I never know. I never know what you're going to get. It's an adventure. I used to think that was adventurous. So DMV sent me to Alcoholics Anonymous a second time, 8 years after my last official DWI. I thought how unfair that was, right? The world's always just treating me unfair. I just have bad luck. And in my mind, I would have these imaginary arguments like I don't even drink like that anymore. I'm a father, I'm a husband. I have a few. And there's no one there. I'm just arguing. I'm arguing with the counselor that I have to go see down the street, And so I went back through. I'm back with my little white slip of paper. I got to get sober, man. So I come back through with my little white slip of paper. I meet my first sponsor, though. And this is a man that's plugged in. This is a man that's plugged into all 3 legacies of the triangle. He's involved in the recovery, the step work. He's involved with the fellowship. He's doing stuff, and he's involved with the service work. He's always doing stuff. And I didn't know that. I just knew this was the funny guy in the room, and I knew that there was a light on inside of him. I knew that he was naturally attractive to other individuals, and I couldn't figure out why. He was attractive to me, his personality. He's a funny guy. There's this warmth about him. He genuinely cared about others. I didn't know, but I'd gladly take some of that. Let's do some of that. So I asked him to sponsor me, be my sponsor, to get all you off my back. You guys kept talking about sponsorship. I was like, all right. This guy who's funny and entertaining. And so that guy just by circumstance got me involved in some of those things. Here's the thing. I had 3 attempts at AA. This last one stuck. I can clearly define for you what stuck this time for me. The first time I couldn't admit that I had a problem and that there was nothing, so I wasn't interested in a solution. This second time I got in, I got a good sponsor, I got a good home group, but I didn't work those pesky old steps. Those seem uncomfortable. It's talking about a lot of change in God and stuff that I have real problems. I don't want to give it up to thin air, and I don't really believe that's going to solve these things. You're telling me to give my very real painful problems up to this thing that I don't believe in. So I couldn't admit that I couldn't do anything about the problem. So of course I walked out. It doesn't matter how good your sponsor is. It doesn't matter how good your home group is. If you're not plugged into the actual solution, this is my belief. I don't know, man. Maybe someone else out there has a different story. But if you're not plugged into the 12 steps, I don't know what you're plugged into. It's only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time for me. I had about 6 months under my belt, and all it took was a vacation and a free drink, and I couldn't say no. And I couldn't say no. And I just knew I wanted to stay sober on my own. I felt better. Things were going better. My marriage was going better. I was a better husband just by cutting out the alcohol. And so I knew I wanted to do that on my own, and how much more time I would have for my family now that I don't have to go to AA anymore. And all it took, so I walked away from everything, and all it took was, about 2 weeks worth of time on my own and a free drink. And I couldn't say no. So 6 more months of that, waking up, wondering how I'm going to get through the day. Suicide, I don't know. We throw that word around a lot. I don't want to make light of it. I would have thoughts like, how much do I have to actually drink to shut my body down in my sleep? So call that what you want, but that was a recurring thought of mine. And on the side, I have this loving wife who I love and loves me dearly, and loving children who really desperately want a father in their life. And I can't figure out how to show up that way. So the third time I come crawling back in, and I guess I didn't literally have a white sheet this time, but I was coming in to save my marriage. I remember kind of this mantra in my head of I really had something going in AA. I can't figure out what it was, but something was different. Something was starting to happen. I wish something would happen to get me back in AA. And I don't really know what you want to call it a prayer, but it got answered, and I got one last big blowout, so I'm back, got kicked out of several emergency rooms, that kind of stuff, and because of my behavior, trying to fight other sick people, and so to save my marriage, right, here we go, who cares about motives, why we come in, to save my marriage, this was it. I had to go the very next day. Couldn't even get my head off the table of that noon AA meeting in the clubhouse, where I knew I wouldn't run into any of the people that were in the fellowship that I was partook of earlier. I was kind of a different AA crowd in a different part of town. And so I just, physically couldn't even get my head up off the table. And I don't even know what they said that day. I just knew that I was desperate, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And I knew by this point, I think this is the big deal for me, is that I knew that my ways don't work. And I don't even know, I'm sure I could have come up with, plan 573, plan 574. I'm sure they're still in here, right? I'm sure I can fabricate one right now on how it's going to be better if I just do this, this, and this, and this. But it never works. And that's when this thing started working for me. When I get out of the way to be able to let a higher power into my life. So I go back to my first sponsor, no arguments, nothing but open arms, welcome me back, no lectures to be endured, no axes to grind. So that sticks out in my head. I just make his home group my home group, because I don't care about vetting groups. I don't care if we get along. I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So if this works for you, you seem to have something that I don't. Your home group's my home group. And I was just like, can we just start on like step 4? I'm convinced. Can I just start on step 4? I want to do anything. I just don't want to go back out there. I think, I don't know. I think if he would have told me to get on my belly and drink a puddle of rainwater, I would have done it at that point. So I started working the steps. And let's see. By about month 8, was month 8 or 9 was my first kind of podium talk, and it was a really big deal. And I was really nervous about it, right? I still get really nervous about it, but it was a really big deal, so I was going to open my book and study up and impress all you fine folks with my wealth of knowledge and whatever. And these are the speaking points that I'm going to say, and what I started to realize, and it was the night before. So what I really realized in going through that is, oh my God, as I'm reading this stuff, the promises are really happening for me. This is month 8 or 9. I'm actually doing the deal. I have a legitimate sponsor. By that time, I was starting to offer to sponsor other men. My sponsor said it would be all right to start doing that. I was actively involved in my home group, so I was learning the spirit of service work and what it means to stop being a taker for once in my life. Setting up coffee, cleaning out coffee, putting away chairs, putting out chairs, whatever it took, picking up trash. And I started having a different experience because I was finally doing something different. And I truly believe that I have a relationship with God today because of this program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't think that would have reached me any other way. So for something that I swore off, that I knew was just too small for my big deals, my big problems, I find is the complete opposite today. I find that there's nothing in God's world that can't be handled if I just take my hands off the outcome and just keep going on with the actions of the 12 steps, man. There just really isn't anything that I've run into. My sobriety date's 12/30/12. In that amount of time of staying active in all three legs of the triangle, I haven't found a single thing that I haven't been able to stay sober through. And that's amazing to me. I couldn't even hardly put together 10 days before, or a week. And now I'm able to stay sober through real serious stuff. Deaths of loved ones and friends, you know how it goes. If we stick around, we're going to experience some of that. Moving here was very difficult. 3 years sober, I loved my first sponsor. I loved my first home group. And moving in the middle of that, my wife got a good job offer here in Charlotte, or there in Charlotte, whichever direction that is. And so we moved, and the school systems look good, and this could be really a gift, so let's go. But doing that in sobriety was scary to me. I didn't know how it was going to be. What if AA doesn't work down here? It's coming from Virginia. But lo and behold, there's always a little bit of a different flavor, but it's the same 12 steps. It works the same anywhere I've gone, anywhere I've ever traveled. The solution's always the same, man. And it just works wherever I go. Today, because of this program, my wife knows where I'm at tonight, right? She lets me out of the house. She knows when I'm coming home. And she knows that she can count on me today. That's something that I can't vouch for before this program. My children are going to be in bed by the time I get home. But they know that Daddy's going to be there in the morning cooking breakfast for them, because that's what Daddy does, because he shows up. He does that today. And that's something they count on. They don't know what I was like before. I couldn't say that earlier. I never showed up. I was a taker, man. That spirit of service, just as we were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier before this talk. I hope this is a good talk. But I don't care if it is. It's none of my business. But the spirit of service is something that I've learned has brought me great joy in life. So one of the other good things in sobriety that I get to do today is I'm going back to school, man. I'm 40 years old. I'm going back to UNCC. I'll save all the details, but I'm going back. I'm spending a lot of money so I can get into a profession where I could help other people, and not really trying to mix two hats. I'm not getting into. I guess that's opinions at that point. Whether you do or not, but just that idea of service, man, it doesn't just stay in this room. That's something I learned. Those 12 traditions teach me about that, and I get to practice that in any group I'm a part of. In fact, I went back to school because of Tradition 7, a self-support. It just dawned on me one night doing a Tradition 7, meeting for my home group that I'm still sitting in this marriage where my wife's doing all the work and I'm just, I'm a stay-at-home father, kind of, we may be ordering out 90% of the time, or we may be all cleaning together on the weekend. So I don't really know what I'm doing. What am I contributing? So it's growth. It's steady growth. And this projection that I used to judge off success and what I'm getting and what I'm doing and all these things that I'm getting is not the right projection. The projection is a spiritual projection. I get to grow in spirit, and I get to practice these these very real principles that other people get to benefit from. So my husband has my wife has a husband today. My wife has a husband today. My children have a father, and then eventually I'll be in a position where I'm contributing to the group that I belong to called my family, and I give back in service. I know I'm getting right up against the time, but yeah, correction work is something that's very dear to me. I've never spent any kind of long-term time, and no one usually ever cares about that anyway. But what I do know is I identify, man. Like, I spend a lot of overnights and weekends. I just know what it's like, and I know what it's like to not know what my problem is and why I keep doing it again and again. So I go into these various facilities today. I get to be a chairperson. I'm about to roll out of that position at the intergroup. The corrections chairperson, where I get to communicate with all kind of different volunteers going in and doing service, and I love it. I love it. It's absolutely brought my recovery to a new place. I love giving of myself today. I love being able to say yes to opportunities like this, even when I still bring my nerves along with me, and I just wouldn't have it any other way. Sponsorship for me is absolutely vital. I stay willing to sponsor other men. I'm very thankful my sponsor rode up with me tonight. And I stand willing to give this away freely. It's been freely given to me. So I think that's my time. I appreciate y'all having me out, and thank you very much, everybody.